Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and I want to send each and every one of you loads and loads of love, and whether you're having your coffee in the morning, or you're having a cocoa in the evening, or you're walking your dog, or whatever it is that you might be doing, loads of love to each and every one of you, and have a fabulous day or a fabulous evening, whatever your time zone is right now. So loads of love to each and every one of you. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, my name is Max and I have an extraordinary letter that was written by a lady called Emma who was writing to her sister Eugenie in the days of coal mining in West Virginia in the 1800s. It would appear that Eugenie left the coal mining business to marry an affluent gentleman living in the Midwest. I have a feeling that Eugenie is an ancestor of mine, which is why I do have her sister's letter that she wrote to her, which I kept for many years as it was a huge source of fascination for me when I stumbled across it by random chance as a young boy. I kept it because in her letter she describes an extraordinary encounter with a mythical beast which I really believe was a Bigfoot. It would seem that Eugenie's father owned a coal mine and she describes her revulsion at how the locals were actually treated by her own father. It would seem she had a compassionate heart, but felt disabled as a young woman at the time to have her voice heard in regards to helping right the dreadful wrongs and exploitations that the miners invariably experienced. Working in a coal mine was doing the hardest, most dangerous job in the entire world, which involved hauling coal and using dangerous explosives in the mine to bring down the coal, a mission that in its day was not without grievous risk. So here is her extraordinary letter that she wrote her sister Eugenie, which includes a Bigfoot encounter that leads her to the revelation that she cannot marry her suitor because she realizes he hasn't got a backbone at all. So here is the story. To my dearest, most beloved sister Eugenie. Eugenie, my sweet, precious, most beloved sister, how dreadfully missed you have been by all of us of late. Our home without doubt feels lost and forlorn without its precious songbird. It would seem that without your cheerful countenance, our mansion lacks the sunshine you always bring to our lives, something that has become painfully apparent to all of us now that you have gone to pastures new. Oh, how I long to see you, Eugenie, my precious, most beloved sister. You indeed have my whole heart. Even Papa has less of a skip in his step these days, and as for Mamma, her face is forever downcast, and she speaks always of the hole in her heart now that you have gone away. I hope that your new life in the Midwest is indeed favouring you well, and that the barren landscape does not dishearten your spirit. Moreover, I hope that the treacherous summer heat has not been a hindrance to the preservation of your perfect pale complexion. I hope that your husband is treating you favourably in a manner of your worth, and that married life does become you. For my dear sweet Eugenie, you deserve the bounty of life's abundant treasures and the greatest happiness of its rich tapestry that it can bestow upon you. I hope in the days to come that we may hear word on the wind from the Midwest of the pitter-patter of tiny little feet soon to cross the threshold of your new sumptuous abode. I hold this hope in my heart like a bright beacon of light, that I may soon become an aunt in the foreseeable future, as such news would be warmly welcomed in my heart. Papa is still up to his old insidious tricks again at the coal mine. It's apparent that he cares not for the people nestled under his wings, nor does he take any responsibility for their sorry plight. He comprehends not the toilsome labours and arduous workloads of the miners, and is not aggrieved by the perils they face daily underground, especially when ceilings are low and accidents more likely to occur. The miners did demand of him an increased wage, and he agreed to this advancement. I hasten to say that so treacherous was Papa that he spiked the prices up in the company stores to make up for the shortfall of the wage increase. The miners are indeed no better off than they were before, and yet our Papa considers himself a virtuous man of God in this shameful, appalling exploitation of his workers. It is beyond reprehensible what he has done. Yet when I registered my misgivings about his devious actions and protested indignantly, he proceeded to tell me that I knew not the ways of business, and that my young brain was better served to focusing on the trivia of more feminine pursuits, and not to concern myself with the issues of the mine. How can I not be concerned, Eugenie dear? For when I look outside my luxurious balcony windows overlooking the mine, I see the young and old faces blackened by the coal dust and the sweat that beats upon their brows. I observe the long, arduous hours that they work and the perilous risks they face. I also hear the rumbling of the mine every day and the loud explosions from beneath the ground. And all of this I observe and see every day. How can my eyes be blinded by what I observe? For that would make me have the hide of a crocodile. I have taken it upon myself to visit the many households of the miners, as I want to express my empathy towards their plight, and show them that not all our family is ignorant of their sufferings. It is hard to fathom how these people of such pleasing countenance live in these small miners' cabins that are far from agreeable, and even my closet, Eugenie, is of greater width and depth than their own tiny houses. It unsettles me and disturbs me greatly to see a family of 8 squashed into such tiny living quarters. Many of them are in debt to Papa at the company store, and struggle to even put food on the table to feed their families. I so wish Papa could forgive their debts with all my heart, as it would be of no real bother to his pocket, yet for them the relief would be a blessing of note. Despite the grievous injustices the miners have invariably faced, not to mention their rising debt and expenses incurred at Papa's company store, these resilient folk still remain upbeat and positive with an attitude of merriment and good humour, always spinning yarns and singing songs, especially down in the mines. I was to learn that the miners always joke and tell tales of devilish apparitions that they encounter in the hole. How can they be so jovial in spirit, give grievous evils that have befallen them? If it were indeed me, I would not be so generous of heart in my forgiveness of Papa. Yet these miners sing and dance and help each other in every regard, and treat their friends as family. I know they are indeed aggrieved by the struggles their daily lives proliferate, but they are still in good spirits, and the young men are forever taught to grin through the wretchedness of the mine, and shine like men in their countenance, despite the dreads they face, for each day hangs in the balance for them, and that is indeed truly the case. Let's not forget to mention the pitiful complications of the black coal dust that does indeed clog their lungs and cause a shallowness of breath, for many have died in this regard, a manner of death that I would not wish on anyone. Yet still Papa refuses any incriminations on their account, and knows no commiseration in his heart for their sorrowful woes, for he cares not for their lives and values them not. I think a herd of cattle would be of more value to him, for indeed many a miner has lost his life from the explosions in the mine, and many a man has succumbed to a brutal injury, like a loss of a limb or eye, as you well know. I was informed that a fortnight after a widow learns about her husband's tragic demise, that our Papa demands her to leave forthwith with her children after such a tragic grief. How can he have in his heart the hardness of solid rocks, and in his mind the fleece of a sheep? For he perceives not the frightful truth of these grave injustices, which I think only God will bring to his attention on the day of our Lord's reckoning. I met a young lady called Violet, whose husband had passed from an explosion a day ago. Her heart was swollen with grief, and her eyes reddened by tears of her turbulent sorrows. I took it upon myself to find her work and lodgings, to accommodate her family, and her gratitude knew no bounds, for she hugged me without restraint, and my heart quickened in delight. I was pleased to have been of service to the poor woman, upon whom my soul surely grieves, for indeed her sorry, most wretched plight I would not wish upon any man. Yet let us not deceive ourselves with thoughts that gladden our hearts, lest we should hear the bitter truth. For Eugenie, it is common here in the mines for souls to indeed be lost, much more so than Papa will ever concede to us. For the astonishing stories I hear of late from those miners' wives are too pitiful for words to express, and they confirm my worst fears of the dreadful casualties in the mine that Papa concealeth from us. So put it in your imagination, Eugenie, for deep consideration and reflection, what I have indeed told you. Another gloomy, restless thought that beats upon my brow and disturbs my peace with feelings of grave concern are for those mules taken into the depths of those dark mines, their bodies burdened by the carts carrying the coal backwards and forwards into the bosom of the mine, with no time to rest their weary legs. For they spend days cloaked in the darkness and the gloom of the mine. How unnatural for the poor mules to succumb to the terrifying explosive sounds of the rumbling mine, and be cushioned from the light of day that quickens their eyes to the perils of physical blindness. Papa cares not for the woeful impediment of the animals, as he cares not for the state of the miners. What I have learnt of late is that all the other mine owners are equally as greedy of gaining wealth, as their crowning glory, at the exploitation of the miners that work for them. It is in my understanding that they all have their own company stores and in-house currencies, much like Papa does, and they care not for anyone apart from their pocketbooks, increasing in weight, and some indeed are worse than Papa, if that were indeed possible, in their ravenous pursuit of this goal. I instructed the miners to tell my father that 3 of the mules had lost air in the mine shaft and had indeed suffocated, and that was when I took the mules to a farmer's field, where I paid them handsomely to take care of the animals for the rest of their days. Upon my visit to the mules a few days later did I discover joy in their eyes, as the sun beat upon their bodies, and they rolled and frolicked in the field, and their happiness was beyond measure. So grateful were they to be away from such a harrowing job, which no animal should have to endure. It is my decision that I will ever help every mule that works in those mines. Indeed, after a year of work, I will consider her to have paid her due, and to be set free and from her hardened labour, and of this decision father must never ever be informed or enlightened. I've recently been courted by the Phillips boy Matthew, as I imagine you still expect it to be the case. He has a heart on him as hard as Papa's is, as his soul is so intent on the pursuit of rich pickings, which seems to be a common goal among all the men I meet. I was to learn this with deep regret when I suggested we went on a picnic together to the wooded area near the ridge where the crooked oak tree stands, opposite the meandering stream, on the right-hand side of the valley. You know the one where we played hide-and-seek as children. It was a pleasing picnic, but I think less to his liking than mine, for the cloth I spread upon the ground was rather too uncomfortable for his soft derriere to abide. It would seem in his lavish cushioned lifestyle he has only ever graced the seat of upholstered chairs, and sitting on the ground was not in agreement with his awkward vertical stature. Even so, he held his countenance in a pleasing and agreeable manner, and hid his displeasure from me, proving to be a gentleman of sorts. We sat and ate our fill, and the meal was pleasing to his appetite. While we were eating under the large oak tree in the woods, it came upon my attention that we were indeed not alone, for I felt with certainty that we were being stared at, but I could see no one in sight. I was also quick to note that Matthew's countenance had taken on a pale pallor, and he had grown exceedingly anxious. He pretended all was well, but even his laughter seemed to have subsided, and became anguished and painfully disturbed, and his attention was far from me, as his eyes regarded the trees with a fearful repose. It was then that I saw a creature that was unlike anything that I've ever seen in all my born days, for never have I seen a creature so strange grace my life before, with the surprise of note. For although the creature looked like a man, it was not a man, and yet it was not an animal either. What it was, I cannot fathom. A giant it was indeed, and colossal in its girth and its size and stature, and it was hefty in its weight. Like a bear, the body was covered in hair, but textured not like that of a bear, but more human-like in its origins. It was a favourable golden colour that was pleasing to the eye. Its face grew no hair, and was of a grey leather, and its nose and jaw were much like yours and mine. But the ridge on its forehead was prominent and furrowed with a great depth. His head was not of human shape, but more like that of an egg, pointed on top, and at the bottom wider in dimension, to be sure. I noted with a keen interest that the head indeed flowed into the shoulders, where no neck was visible. The creature had arms that were so long he could have almost touched his toes, and his feet and hands were indeed very large to behold. It was the deep-set eyes that were so bright and gold that had my attention ordered, for what I was seeing did amplify my awe, and my fascination was indeed aroused. The creature stepped forward out of the shadows into the light, and his reticent shyness was now of the past, for he regarded us with an equal interest. It would seem that Matthew was filled with panic as he began to shake in terror, and I did behold his eyes were round with fright, and his body wobbled like a blamage. In that moment he knew no regard for me, and a gentleman he most certainly was not, for he ran away as fast as the lions upon the mountain, and he screamed with a shrillness that was deafening to the ear. I was left alone, standing close to this strange creature I knew not. But I felt no fear, for it was not unkindly disposed towards me, but more playful in its demeanour and approach. The expression upon his face was that of mischief. It glided towards my picnic that lay upon the ground, and rifled through all the food in the wicker basket, with an eagerness that was comical, for the creature was indeed of great humour. It found the fruit and ate with great delight, and the stewed peaches and strawberries gladdened his heart, and the rich fruit cake was his prize, for that he ate with gusto. The creature put the empty wicker basket upon his head, and so funny was the look that my laughter could not subside, and he seemed pleased by my pleasure, for I believe a natural comic he was born to be. I liked him more than words can express, for he warmed the cockles of my heart like no other, apart from you, Eugenie dear. He then bolted away for a moment, and came back, and in my hand he placed a stone, so pretty in its colour, as it had hints of turquoise and gold in its depths. He looked into my eyes as he gave me this gift, and I shall not forget his kindness. In the distance the voices of men were heard, armed with rifles, for indeed Matthew had told them that I was surely dead, ravaged by a wild animal, hungry for my blood. And yet he had run away, leaving me to die. So a gentleman he most certainly was not. I told the men the creature had been dealt with, and that I was fine, and they believed my false report, for I wanted to protect the animal at every cost. Matthew was pleased to see me alive, and indeed asked my papa for permission to marry me. But I told papa that a cowardly man I must surely refuse, and papa did not disagree with my persuasions, which was for me a great relief. I had thought he would press upon me heavily to marry Matthew, but he didn't, I am glad to say. So, Eugenie dear, I will not be betrothed to Matthew as you believed I would. I have seen him in a brand new light. But do not be disheartened, sister dear, for the time will come when I find the right suitor for me. I am sorry to unload these burdens of mine upon your ears, but I wanted to share with you my grievances, for you I know will surely understand the issues of the mine that have long concerned us. Please pray for the miners at the mine, and their wives, of course, and that papa will be more lenient towards them. Max, thank you so very much for sending the extraordinary letter to me. It really touched my heart. Until next time, goodbye and good night.